All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So today we're gonna be ending World War One. Okay. Last time we had class, we were talking about how the U.S. Was getting pretty upset with the Germans sinking passenger ships and things like that. So you're gonna see what happens today. All right. So we're gonna analyze the reason why Russia got out of the war, and we're gonna examine the importance of the Treaty of Versailles. All right, so here is your warm up picture. Now, if you notice the giant person in the middle who's like, you know, doing that weird arm movement thing, it says right on their shirt, Russian people. So, what do you think this artist is trying to say about the Russian people, right? And if you notice on the bottom, there's some people with like crowns and things like that running away. So what do you think this artist is trying to say about the Russian people? Okay. Um, so go ahead, think about it, write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. So the United States President Wilson won the 1916 election by basically stating how he was the peace candidate. He was like, you know what, the Lusitania was attacked, but I didn't send troops to go fight. The Suez was attacked. I didn't send troops to go fight. It's not our war, type of thing. So a lot of Americans were like, yeah, it's not our war. Why should we be fighting? So they reelected President Wilson. But a couple months later, in January 1917, um, Germany decided, we should send an offer to Mexico. And they basically sent a message to their ambassador in Mexico named Arthur Zimmerman. And basically, they were like, hey, we're going to send you a message. We want you to give this to the Mexican government and see what they say to this offer. Well, the thing is, the United States intercepted that message. And you can see from this picture right here, that's the actual letter, the actual message that was being sent. And as you can see, it is in code, but the United States broke the code. And basically, this offer says, is telling Mexico from Germany that if the United States joined the war and they win against Germany, Germany wants Mexico to attack America. And if they do that, Germany will help Mexico regain the lost land that the United States has. So you might be thinking, well, what's the lost land? Well, the lost land was the states of California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, and parts of Oregon. All that land was once Mexico, and Germany is basically telling them, if the United States joins the war, goes against us, we want you to attack the United States, and then we'll help you get back all that land. Now, the American people, once they hear about this message right here, they're upset. They're livid. Like, how is Germany going to say that, give that type of offer to Mexico? Mexico's looking like, hey, you guys got this message before we did, so we know nothing about this. So this really ticked off a lot of Americans. And then Germany was kind of like, well, fine then. If you guys are all upset about this, we'll go back to the old way of fighting. Remember, they signed that Suez pledge not to attack passenger ships and some of that. Now they're like, well, we're going to go back to the way things were. We're going to sink every ship in the Atlantic. Uh, Germany felt very good that, hey, we're about to starve out Britain and France. And on top of that, they were like, the United States is not going to join the war. All they do is talk. They talk, 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 talk. They don't do nothing. In fact, from February 3rd to March 21st, the German U-boats sank 6 merchant ships, and these ships were carrying food, equipment, machinery, things like that for the British and the French. And again, Germany was like, "Look, see, we shot down 6 of their ships, and nothing. They're all talk. That's all they do." So on April 2nd, 1917, President Wilson goes, "Okay, you know what? We're done talking." And he called a special session of Congress and asked for a declaration of war against Germany, and he gets it. So now the United States is officially in World War One. Now, April 1915, at the Second Battle of Ypres, this is the first time that poison gas is used in war. So mustard gas is used, and people again going blind, throwing up everywhere. Some people they died from it because remember when you inhale mustard gas, your lung gets filled with water from your body, and you basically drown. You know, um, and again, like I said, people who didn't die from it, vomiting like crazy, blind. They, they couldn't breathe through their throat because it scratched up their throat really bad. And this became the beginning parts of when gas masks became like an essential part of a soldier's equipment. And basically, from this point on, since April 1915 till now, even from now into the future, when a soldier goes through boot camp and some of that, and they're being trained how to use equipment, they're trained how to properly put on the gas mask. And if they don't put it on, they're going to be coughing, they're going to be burning their skin, things like that, because that's what that gas does. So you have to put it on perfect, or else the gas is going to go through, and it's just going to burn your eyes, burn your skin. You can't breathe, things like that. Okay, so it's because of that battle. That's why we still to this day train soldiers to use gas masks. Okay. Now, in 1916, tanks were introduced by the British. And the thing is, tanks, they really sucked. They were slow, they were unreliable, they didn't maneuver well. They just, they were constantly breaking down. They were pretty easy to destroy. They're not like the tanks we have now that can withstand like a rocket. You know, no, these things, a high caliber bullet could go through it, you know. And if they fell into a hole, good luck getting it out because a lot of times they just got stuck, you know. Now, here's a little interesting fact. So, I told you earlier, these U boats, the German U boats, were sinking ships all throughout the Atlantic. Well, when the United States joined the war and we were sending troops over to Britain and France, none of those ships carrying soldiers sank. They all made it. Okay. Now, in Russia, at the same time in March 1917, riots broke out throughout Russia. People were so upset with the Russian government, basically just telling them, "You're mishandling this war. Um, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough food. We don't have enough fuel. And yet you guys are just throwing it around everywhere like we have a lot, but we don't." And this upset a lot of Russian people. So this guy right here, Vladimir Lenin, is the leader of the Bolshevik Party, and he basically is part of the group that overthrows the government. So Tsar Nicholas II, you may have heard the story with Anastasia, the princess who got away, things like that. No, she died. The Bolshevik people killed the royal family. Okay, and it's there that they set up the communist government in Russia. Okay. Now, once Lenin takes over, his first official act as leader of Russia is to get out of the war. And so he and Germany come to an agreement. They sign a treaty on March 3rd, 1918. Now, since they're getting out of the war, they're basically saying, "We are defeated, we lost." So, whenever a country loses a war and they sign the treaty, they have to give up something: money, land, both, And in this case, it was land. Russia lost a lot of territory. They had to give up Ukraine, Finland, and a bunch of territories in the Polish and the Baltic area. Okay. Now with Russia out of the way, Germany was like, okay, now we can focus on the British, the French, and the Americans, the Belgians. We can beat them. Now we can focus on them. We don't have to worry about Russia anymore. Okay. Well, thing is, on July 15th, 1918, the German troops tried so hard to push back the Americans and the French. Problem is, the Americans are fresh. These guys have just barely been came to war. They're ready to go. The French have been fighting for the past like 3, 4 years. They're exhausted, but now with the Americans, they feel like, hey, we can win this because these guys are fresh. They're ready to fight. Our guys are tired, exhausted. They've been fighting, but now we can really have the Americans help out. And at the Second Battle of Marne, the Germans tried to push the Americans and the French back, but it didn't work. They didn't advance. But 3 days later, after they tried, the Americans and the French do a counterattack and they hit the Germans hard. And now the Germans are running away. So, US President Woodrow Wilson is thinking, how can we, you know, end this war and prevent any future wars from happening? And he comes up with a plan. He calls it the 14 points. Now, one of these points, I believe it's actually the last one, it says that we should form a League of Nations. Now, this League of Nations would help preserve peace and prevent any future wars from happening. Basically, every country who signs will be pledging to respect and protect one another's territory. So, how I explained it in class was like, think of them like a family, right? If someone does something to your brother, sister, some of that, you're going to retaliate against them, right? You, your other brothers, sisters, your cousins, some of that, you guys are going to bond together and go against whomever was picking on one of your family members, right? Well, that's how this League of Nations was. America, Britain, France, Belgium, Russia, all these countries would get together, and if someone attacked one of these countries, all the other ones would join in too to fight against whoever went after them. You know, so it's a kind of a way to be like, yeah, it's not smart to try to attack this country because they got big countries to back them up. Okay. Now, in October 1918, the Ottoman Empire signed a treaty with the Allies. They were done. They're like, we've lost a lot of soldiers. We're basically out of money. We're done. We want out of this war. Okay. About a month later, on November 4th, Austria-Hungary reaches an armistice agreement. An armistice is basically an agreement to stop fighting or like a truce. So if you've ever done something like, you know, fight somebody, cousin, whatever, you guys are fighting, hitting each other, whatever, and all of a sudden you guys are both tired, you're both exhausted, and you say, okay, I won't hit you if you don't hit me. That's a truce. That's an armistice. Okay. Now Germany's really, really, really upset at Austria-Hungary because they're like, hey, this war started because of you. We're here to back you up, and you guys are quitting? Heck no, we're not going to quit. Well, a week later, they are forced to quit. They are forced to seek an armistice. And this is basically the end of World War One on November 11th, 1918. Okay. Now, the Paris Peace Conference, the Allies get together and they're deciding how should we go on in the future? How can we build a post-war world where we could stop all fighting, prevent any more of these world wars from happening? Okay. Now, they also discuss things like who are they going to punish and how. And on June 28th, 1919, the Treaty of Versailles is signed. Basically, Germany can no longer have an army. Okay, that's one of the things. Second thing is they had to pay for everything. They had to pay reparations to everything and everyone. So, however much money the Americans spent and lost, they got paid back. Same thing with Britain, France, Belgium, Russia, uh, Austria, Hungary, um, Romania. All these countries that fought basically were said, "Well, here's our bill. This is how much we lost. This is how much we spent on this and that." And Germany had to pay it all back. Okay. And on top of that, they had to acknowledge that they were the ones who started the whole war, for the outbreak of the war, for all the destruction, devastation, all the millions of people who died. They had to basically say that was our fault, even though Russia didn't start the or Germany didn't start the war. They are being punished harshly. Okay, um, countries like Belgium, France, and Russia decide, you know what? President Wilson has a great idea with that League of Nations. We should join together and form it. Well, they do, but one country does not join, and that's the United States. The country where the president thought of that, the country said, no, we don't want any part of that League of Nations. Okay. Now, before I end this lesson, I want you guys to see this because this is something that it's one of those weird twists in history. If you look at that bottom picture, that car, that's the car that Archduke Ferdinand got shot in. That was how World War One started, when he died, he got shot. Now, if you look at the where the license plates is, you'll see a little white thing sticking out of it. And if you notice, it says A111118. That's his license plate number. But here's the trippy thing. If you look at the notes where it says November 11th, 1918, Germany forced to seek armistice. What letters armistice start with? An A, right? Look at the license plates. A. And then look at the date of the armistice. November 11th. What month is November? Right? January's 1, February 2nd, March 3, April 4, and you keep going. Which one is November? And it's 11. And what date was the date? November what? 11th. And what was the year? 1918. So if you notice, A 1 1 November, 1 1 11th, 1 8 the 18th. So some people, um, kind of one of those conspiracy people, believe that the end of the war was predestined. That was meant to end on November 11th, 1918, because that was on the license plates of the guy who, when he died, Archduke Ferdinand, was the start of the war. So it depends on what you believe. Do you believe in that type of thing or not? I mean, that's up to you. Okay. Is it just a weird coincidence? Maybe. Who knows? Okay. So, with that being said, hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. Um, Also, if when you turn this work in, be sure to ask me to give you the um, turret. Sorry, guys, I had a brain fart. Uh, the trench worksheet. Okay, remind me if I don't give it to you to give that to you. Okay, it's called the trench worksheet. Okay, so that way you guys can get that done. All right, so once you have all this written down, you're all good. That's the end of this lesson. So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. So with that being said, guys, take care, be safe, and I'll see you guys later, okay?